Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, this is Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things nerdy through a common sense lens. And man, I'll tell you what, boys and girls, it is not looking good for Fantastic Four out there. And not to toot my own horn too terribly much on this movie out there, but I was one of the ones that weeks ago I was out there predicting the fact that there'd be a very good possibility this movie might not even crack $500 million globally. And a lot of people out there, even folks that agree with us that are in our corner of the internet, we're expecting $650 for this movie, you know, obviously beating Superman and a lot of other things going on out there. And then we'd have to sit around and argue over the fact of whether or not the movie actually made a profit because of reshoots and all of the kind of over budgeted stuff. Well, needless to say, boys and girls, those arguments are going to become completely and totally numb and void. And although I don't generally like to toot my own horn too terribly much, I try to stay as humble as possible. Common Nerd was right again, boys and girls, because it will be an absolute miracle from God on high out there if Fantastic Four doesn't turn into a giant fantastic flop and not even crack $500 million globally, which is its minimum for it to actually make a profit based strictly on the reported budgets and not what the actual budgets are more than likely going to be. And ladies and gentlemen, that will be the third flop of the year for the Marvel Cinematic Universe under Kevin Feige. And ladies and gentlemen, when we get to the expose from Bo DeMeo that we are going to do in a video later today that you will get to see later this evening at the time this video should release, it will explain a lot of the problems going on behind Marvel. But ladies and gentlemen, we get to see the front-facing result of those problems behind the scenes because Fantastic Four is going to flop at the box office beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point, ladies and gentlemen. It could very possibly not even crack $450 million globally, and this is a giant egg on the face, and also shows you and reiterates to Hollywood once again that Pedro Pascal is not the hot commodity to fans and audiences out there like they all would love to think of him as. Pedro Pascal fatigue and Marvel fatigue have clearly set in because Fantastic Four's third weekend drop once again comes in way over all of the Hollywood estimates out there, turning into nothing more than a disastrous dumpster fire at the third weekend box office. How bad is it? Well, boys and girls, we're going to check out this article from cosmicbook.news, jump over, of course, to the actual numbers themselves, and, of course, remind everybody about Pedro Pascal's long history of flops at the box office. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing. We just crossed 2,100. We're sailing our way towards 22. I think we're sitting at like 2137, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Let me know what you think about all this. Does it surprise you at all that Fantastic Four's third weekend box office is actually coming in way worse than a lot of the Hollywood trade magazines estimated out there? Do you believe this movie will end up being a gigantic flop and cost Disney Marvel hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office once again? Did you go see the Fantastic Four movie out there? Did you really enjoy it and don't understand why the box office is doing so bad out there? If you did go see it and enjoy it, what do you think the reasons are behind this movie failing so miserably at the box office? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. As always, all opinions are welcome here. And if you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. All right, from cosmicbook.news and our dear sweet Matt McGloin. Fantastic Four box office facing another huge drop. Worse than Thunderbolts. Yes, boys and girls, the movie that was an undoubtable flop and lost money at the box office, its third weekend for Fantastic Four is worse than the Thunderbolts. And arguably, the Thunderbolts actually had a really good hold. It just opened so weakly, there was no way that movie could ever have made a profit in any way, shape, or form. And guess what? Even despite the excellent opening weekend for Fantastic Four, lost to Superman, it's not going to end up saving it in any way, shape, or form because these drop-offs are just too drastic. And it was all of the funny part about this too was, and I wish I would have bookmarked the articles, and I will try to do this in the future for all of you out there that also love to rub Hollywood's nose in it, because Hollywood was predicting, two different trade magazines, a 50% drop for the second weekend or the third weekend for Fantastic Four. Boy, were they optimistic and way out of the ballpark. And remember, this is just the final Sunday estimates. We won't have the actual numbers until late today at the time of this recording or first thing Tuesday morning, because Marvel has been real scant with releasing those final numbers until the very end of the day. Normally, because it comes in even worse, although not drastically a lot, worse than the final Sunday estimates. They'll normally be off by 1 or 2 percentage points. So we could potentially see this thing end up having a 60, 62, 63% drop in its third weekend. And if that trend continues, it does not matter. This thing is going to flop and not crack 500 million, possibly not crack 450 million. But how does this hold up? The third, common nerd. The third Friday brought in just 4 point. That's my AI version of me resetting. The third Friday brought in just 4.5 million. Another big drop of 61.4% from the previous Friday. That puts the film on track for an estimated $16 million to $17 million opening weekend. That drop follows the second weekend plummeting 67.1%, right? That was the estimates. That was the tracking from the Hollywood trade magazines. Actual numbers came in even under those estimates, just like the second weekend, just like the first weekend. It's almost like you shouldn't listen to the Hollywood trade magazines anymore because they're in bed with the Hollywood studios and are always giving a much rosier picture than the actual reality ends up being. Because guess what? Update. Estimates are offering only a 15.5 million third weekend drop, another 60% drop, lower than Thunderbolts, and along with Captain America 4, Disney named Thunderbolts as a big loss in a recent an investor report. Boy, I can't wait for that next quarterly earnings. Are they going to admit that Fantastic Four was a flop, or are they just going to sweep it under the rug? Won't be long before we get to find out, but either way, the movie is a flop, and all of you pixie dusters out there can cry and whine and moan in the comment section down below all you want, but at minimum, even with the reported budget of $200 million at a 2.5 times the production budget, which is the industry standard, even accepted by the Hollywood Reporter and Variety out there, of how much money this movie needs to make globally to even make an argument that this movie made a profit. That's $500 million. This movie is not going to hit it with these kind of drops weekend over weekend. And remember, as this movie progresses and continues to drop, it loses more and more theaters. So the drop is only going to get worse into a point where it just flat out plateaus and it can't possibly get any worse. And that's when you see the more of that decline. This thing is not going to crack $500 million globally, and it will end up being a flop, boys and girls. It's now possible Fantastic Four could fall short of the Thunderbolts, despite opening much higher at $117.6 million compared to Thunderbolts' $74.3 million. Still, it's doing better than Captain America 4, though that's not saying much. Yeah, that's like saying, well, it's doing better than the Marvels, the movie that absolutely lost Disney Marvel $300 million and didn't crack $200 million globally, according to the numbers themselves, because Disney stopped reporting on all of that information. Yeah. For comparison, Thunderbolts pulled in $4.26 million on its third Friday and ended the weekend at $6.64 million, over $1.5 million more than Fantastic Four. Captain America Brave New World managed $3.5 million for Friday and $14.85 million for the weekend. Literally not even a full $1 million under what Fantastic Four is doing. Tell me again, Pixie Dusters, how the movie's going to be a profitable and a success for Disney Marvel. That means Fantastic Four may slightly edge out Thunderbolts, but that depends on how the weekend goes. And again, it's not saying much if it barely beats Thunderbolts. Scratch that, it actually says a lot. James Gunn's Superman continues to dominate Marvel, but Gunn's DCU launchpad also happened to have its own struggles. Still, Superman's third Friday brought in $7 million with a third weekend total of $24.85 million. That's nearly $9 million more than Fantastic Four is expected to earn this weekend. And honestly, It's one of them situations where it's literally been even worse than that. I mean, you're talking about literally one of them situations where it's practically now almost $10 million more is what Superman made. Just shy of $10 million more of what Superman made in its third weekend than what Fantastic Four has made. It's doing that bad. It's falling that far behind. And don't get me wrong, Superman's arguably not going to make a profit. But guess what? Fantastic Four is even worse than that, boys and girls. Even worse than that. That's nearly $9 million more than Fantastic Four is expected to earn this weekend, with a production budget reportedly north of $200 million and possibly closer to $350 million with reshoots from what we have been told. Fantastic Four's performance remains far from what it needs to break even. The steep week-to-week drop suggests audience interest is fading fast and with no signs of a rebound. We just went over that Thunderbolts failure means for the next Avengers movie, and now we're going to see that with Fantastic Four as well. That's only continuing this trend. What does that mean for Avengers Doomsday? A movie that we know there is easily going to end up having a $500 million budget. I mean, what? Iron Man's character out there, Robert Downey Jr. is going to get, what, $40 million? Either at least for both movies, if not a piece just for those. And guess what? Pedro Pascal ain't the Hollywood draw everybody thought he was, because this guy has a long history of flops at the box office. It's just not good. First up was Eddington, Ari Aster's satirical comedy starring Pedro Pascal and Joaquin Phoenix, and a tale of a small-town sheriff unraveling amid a vampire plague. Released in 2025, estimated $5 million opening weekend with a budget north of $20 million, earning a mere $625,000 in Thursday previews. Critics and analysts point to marketing and niche appeal. The biggest blow came with Fantastic Four. Obviously, we know that one's going to flop out there. It's one of them situations where this is just one of those situations that he continues to go on with this kind of situation, the unbearable weight of massive talent. Pascal co-starred with Nicolas Cage, right? Despite intriguing premise and solid reviews, the $30 million film grossed a partially $29 million worldwide. Clearly a commercial failure. Wonder Woman also had Pedro Pascal in it, although you can't really blame him for that one, but that one flopped as well. Drive Away Dolls, Ethan Coen's road trip with Pascal in the supporting role, fizzled it out with scrapped together barely $5.9 million domestically with $5.10 million reported budget. The Great Wall in 2016, $150 million action epic, right? Only didn't fail at the box office with $45.4 million domestically and worldwide $334 million. Still unprofitable after marketing. So it just goes on and on and on. Pedro Pascal, despite all of Hollywood's marketing, despite all of Hollywood's push, is not the draw he was going to be. And I don't know if Hollywood's estimates for Fantastic Four and how well it was going to do based on the box office was based on their own diluted idea of the appeal of Pedro Pascal, because apparently everybody in Hollywood loves him. But guess what? The audiences don't. And the Marvel audience out there, the hardcore fans, showed up that opening weekend. And they showed you that they were there for it. And they seemed to enjoy it. And they seemed to love it. But the general audience, the people that used to make these movies, billion-dollar franchises, used to make these massive returns come in for Disney Marvel, are gone. They've been burned. They don't trust you anymore. Marvel fatigue is real. And they've done it to themselves because nobody trusts your race-swapping, gender-swapping, girl boss narrative that the marketing pushed for Fantastic Four, even though despite every other reviews I've heard from people I know and trust, it really wasn't as predominant as what the marketing would have you believe. But the marketing is what the general audiences hear out there. And unless the marketing is like what we saw with Deadpool and Wolverine, of being just a fun-fastic blast of a time from a couple of guys that the fans actually know and trust, you're just not going to see the returns that you used to. And that's Marvel's fault. That's Kevin Feige's fault. That's people that Bo DeMayo will names in his video that we're going to do on that one next. Because of that kind of stuff. Because they have made the decisions to ignore the comic books, to completely and totally ignore all of those stories from them, not stick to them, to, of course, push their agenda with the gender swapping of Silver Surfer, with the Sue Storm girl boss narrative that they pushed in all of the marketing for this movie. And guess what? The audiences don't love Pedro Pascal. They don't give a crap about him, and they're sick and tired of his divisive politics, and they're sick and tired of seeing him everywhere. He's not that good of an actor. He was great in Game of Thrones, but other than that, he's been mediocre at best. And Fantastic Four is just another giant shine an example of everything wrong with Marvel under Disney, under Kevin Feige, and under the rest of the executives out there. And boys and girls, it's these people's fault. Luis Esposito, Kevin Feige, Bob Iger, all of those folks are the people to be blamed for all of this. They have decided to ignore the fans, ignore the source material, and go their own way, using a lot of our favorite IPs as nothing more than skin suits for their own personal agenda. And guess what? The fans have woken up to it, and they're not going to put up with it. They're not going to listen to it, and they're not going to go out there and support you blindly. And guess what? Even with rave reviews, even with word of mouth, when you spend a budget of $200 million to reportedly $300 to $350 million, you are not going to get that return on investment anymore. And this is what happens when you give people 5 years and arguably almost a decade worth of garbage content that they don't want, that doesn't respect the lore. And then when things fail and flop, you decide to blame the fans, that it's our fault, that we're so stupid that we can't understand the brilliance and excellence of these movies. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter how stupid you think we are, Marvel. It doesn't matter how much of a bigot or a fascist or cyst or phobe or anything else you think we are. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the audiences and the customer and the fans, most of all, decide what flops and what succeeds. And the fans have decided that Fantastic Four is going to flop beyond anyone except for apparently common nerds believes was possible. It'll be a miracle if this thing hits $500 million. It's more than likely not even going to hit $450 million, and certainly will never be profitable for Kevin Feige and Disney Marvel. And at the end of the day, it's their fault. They have danced with the devil and trying to push all of this agenda-driven nonsense. They have burned the majority of their audience out there. No one trusts them. And now Fantastic Four has turned into a giant flop and will cost them hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. And guess what? It's exactly what Kevin Feige deserves and the rest of Disney Marvel. Because at the end of the day, fans have decided. And fans have decided that Fantastic Four has turned into a giant, fantastic flop.